It's Chelsea.
It's Nina.
And you're in the Critics' Kingdom.
Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be doing Twitches.
Yes.
Which is starring, everybody's... One of two of the great twin sets.
Yes, you're forgetting our third, though, which is Lindsay Lohan and Lindsay Lohan in Parent Trap.
True. The second one, obviously, being Mary-Kate and Ashley. It's not a ranking, it's just it's a trifecta.
Yeah, no, it is. a true trifecta.
But Twitches, I did not remember it particularly well. Just because I think that when this came out, it was 2005, and I was sort of aging out of Disney at that point. I had pretty much decided that I was too grown for that, and I would spend my time watching, UPN and, WB. Or UPN might have been off by then, WB. Or it's still CW.
Yeah.
And things of that nature.
What then became the CW.
Exactly.
I was probably watching The Inn.
Oh, yeah, and The End.
Yeah, because they had Degrassi, Sabrina,
Radio Free Roscoe.
Mm-hmm.
No one remembers
Instant
that
Star.
show, but it was great.
Beyond the Break. They had some great,
they had a nice
teen tween
situation going
programming.
on. And Disney was not it. But I guess Twitches might have been their attempt to
age up a little bit,
or to snag some of them babies that were leaving, because things like The End were new competition for them, I feel like.
Yeah, because that did not exist in, when they started doing DComs in, 97.
Yeah.
The Inn wasn't quite a thing yet.
And at this point, I think Saturday Night Nick...
Snick
Teen
was,
Nick and Teen Nick were at their peak.
Yeah,
they were doing some really dope stuff. I'm pretty sure Drake and Josh was on.
Yes,
and Zoe 101, Unfabulous. That was that era. So I think that Disney was probably just in the space of we gotta try to
some stuff for the tweens.
Yeah, snatch some of these kids back. Well, not kids anymore, tweens back. But it did not work for me.
No, and I was still watching Disney, but not nearly as religiously. So I remember really liking this film when I was young, but I don't think it was necessarily because of I enjoyed it. It was more there's black girls playing witches, and that's very much a not often seen concept. So I feel like that was cool, and then also Disney had bought the rights to Sister Sister by this point, so they were they owned all the rights, so they were playing it all the time. That's how I watched every single episode of Sister Sister, was because Disney had bought the rights in the early 2000s, and they were just playing it from the beginning.
They did play it a lot. That was when they were playing that, Boy Meets World.
Yes,
I think
it was an afternoon block.
I think they had gotten Smart Guy too.
Yes.
They were really trying to get. They had syndicated all this all these teen shows from the late 90s, and they were really trying to get back. Or family sitcoms,
right? Or slightly older, to get that slightly older audience, I think.
Yeah.
So it had our favorite twins. It had Tia Tamara, who we then loved from Sister Sister, and I'm sure that's probably what happened too. Is that Sister Sister played so well that they were we know you guys are grown, but could you guys come and do a Disney Channel original movie? And Tia and Tamara were probably just okay.
I'm sure that they paid them a lot of money, and I think that when we watch this film, I think you can see that the money went to paying Tia and Tamara and potentially renting a Porsche, and that was it.
Yes.
That's where all of the funds went, and other things fell to the wayside.
Yes. To get into the recap, we start off and we're basically seeing a story play out. We see this kingdom, and then you see it covered in darkness, and then you see these two twins, one who has a
baby twins.
baby,
infants.
just born. Have not aired out yet. And you see them
fresh out the package.
Literally fresh out the womb. And one has a moon amulet around her neck, and the other one has a sun amulet around her neck. And you just see the darkness swirling, and they're clearly in the middle of the castle, and you don't really know why, because they're just
really
it's somebody literally
there.
being in the middle of the drawing room in Buckingham Palace, and you're I don't know why you're just here, but okay.
Fair enough. You're clearly important to
right?
the story.
You're just and they're babies. So then you just see these two white people take them, and they're help, we've got to get them out. They've repelled the darkness, and we need to make sure that they're safe going forward, because they're going to save us, or something along those lines.
Yeah, they do. I think that you are you're hearing a prophecy.
Yeah, one of the sisters is telling you what happened to get us to the now, basically.
Pretty sure it's Tia.
Yeah, it sounded like Tia.
Yeah.
And so they're explaining all that, and then you see these two white people with the babies go separate ways, but into the same dimension. And then you find out that they're going to Earth.
To our dimension.
Right. They come to Earth, and then they drop them off, like, at a fire... They never show you where they drop them off, but it's someplace,
It's
like...
two separate places.
Yeah.
One of them drops them off at, like, a fire station.
And then somebody else puts them...
At a hospital?
Place. Yeah.
One's a hospital, for sure.
So they separated them. And then we go to the now, and we see... we're introduced to Cameron first, and we see that
Cameron
she's
played by
like,
Tamara.
Yes, and we see that she's like this, like, you know, relatively wealthy young woman, like, has this huge room with a lot of closets. So we're like, okay.
that's a plot point.
Literally, that's an important point in the plot. So then her parents come in, and they're like, ooh, it's your 21st, girl. And she's like, yes! And that's, like, that's literally what happens. And
they're into all the yelping.
Yes.
They're a very upbeat family.
And her parents are also black, which was a nice touch.
Yeah, I was down to see a nice, rich black family.
Like, rich black family. Not
Buckets.
like middle class,
Yeah.
like rich. And so she's like, oh, you know, I've already been up for hours because I get up with the sun. And she's wearing, like, the sun amulet that we had seen at the beginning. So then we're like, oh my gosh, it's the baby. All grown up.
In case you were confused.
In case you were confused. And then she's just like, I feel like something good is going to happen today. And her parents are like, something good happens to you every day. And because, again, they're black and rich in Toronto. And so, yes,
True.
they then, like, go to the other sister, Alex, who we can see is, like, laying on a couch. And this little girl, like, scares her awake. Which must be the weirdest way to wake up, by the way.
That's horrible.
That's a horrible way to wake up.
I would hate that.
And she wakes up, and the little girl's like, it's your birthday, you're 21, blah, blah, blah. And this is Tia, but in this, she's playing this girl named Alex. And Alex is, like, sleeping on the couch, and she wakes up, and, like...
And she wakes up mad late. That's
yes.
the whole thing. It's probably, like, 11 a.m. or something.
Yeah, it's, like, later. And then her friend, who is also there in the house, is like, oh, my mom wanted to, like, say happy birthday, too, but she didn't want to wait on you because you sleep in too late. And then she's like, oh, yeah, that's real. Like, and then she's like, you know, I stayed up late writing. And they're like, oh, okay, like, girl, that's what you do.
She's got the moon on her.
And she's got the moon amulet. So we're like, oh, there's the other one. And then we go back to Cameron, and Cameron and her parents are, like, playing tennis, and they're talking about how tonight, because it's Halloween, it's her birthday, they're going to have a huge, like, blowout party for her, like, at the house, and she's, like, planning it, and they're like, oh, honey, what are you going to do? What are you going to wear? It's this whole thing. And she's like, oh, me and my girl Beth are going shopping later.
In the Porsche.
And so that's the next scene we see is her in the Porsche, like, with her friend Beth. They're driving down the main avenue of Toronto. Would also like to say that, like, this isn't expressly set in Toronto, but this is
I was gonna say I actually clearly filmed in Toronto.
This is clearly filmed somewhere in Canada, but I'm guessing Toronto. And
I think it's in theory it's supposed to be like California.
Probably.
I mean,
everything in Disney, most of them are set in California. But, you know, they're driving down the main drag of Toronto. And as they're driving, they're like, oh my god, it's like our favorite shop. So they're like, well, we should go in. And at the same time, we see Alex getting off a bus with her friend, and she's just trying to find a job. Because she's like, listen, girl, it's hard out here if all you do is
she's
write.
Homeless.
Yes, and she's living, and that's when we find out she's basically living with the little girl and her friend that she had been, like, woken up by. She lives with them because her mother had passed away a few months ago. So she's essentially, like a homeless person, or homeless girl aside from her friend's her friend's house. And she's like, I'm just trying to find a job in these streets. So she goes, you know, pounding the pavement. Meanwhile, the two white people that we had seen at the beginning that take them, they pop back up, and they're, like, super excited because they're like, oh my gosh, like, you can feel like something is about to happen, which is basically that they're going to meet. Mm-hmm. And so one of them, the girl is Ileana and the guy is Karsh. Ileana surprises Cameron, I believe, because she's been watching Cameron, and she's like, oh, you're so ready for this, blah, blah, like, appears for a second, and Cameron's like, I don't know who you are, lady, but okay. She's like, I'm just trying to get this dress for my party tonight.
Yeah, and Karsh is like, you have to stop interfering with them. I've told you this multiple times. Leave her alone.
Right, because they've clearly been watching them as they grew up to make sure that this happened. And like,
make sure that they're safe, because the darkness could come back. Yeah, there's, like, a whole thing with the prophecy again.
Right. So then, they're like, oh, it's up to fate now, and we then see Cameron and Alex, they end up bumping into each other in the store, where Cameron is trying to buy this dress, and Alex is trying to just get a job. after Karsh has already intervened to even get Alex in the door. To go into the store because she would have never tried to apply there. They meet and they're like, "Oh my God, we're twins! What does this mean?" And then they like grasp hands, and then like Alex initially like hates it. She's like, "No, I don't want to know who you are. Like, I don't want to mess with this." And Cameron's like immediately into it. Like she's like, "Yes, I knew something was gonna happen today. I'm super excited."
And it's you,
right?
You
and
are
she's
the
like,
thing.
"You need to come to my party tonight." Like blah blah blah. So then they like get in. They hop in Cameron's Porsche, and Alex is just like, "Girl, where did this money come? Like a Porsche?" And then Cameron's like, "Oh yeah, it's old." And then Alex is like, "That doesn't make it any better." So then they hop in the Porsche. They realize then that like they have powers because they like hold each other's hands and stuff starts happening.
I think time stops or moves.
Yeah, like when they were on their way to hop into the Porsche, they like hold each other's hands and time like slows down and like, whoa, like I guess we're witches.
I guess we're witches.
And then they hop into the Porsche and like
hijinks
do it
ensue.
again. Yes, and then they do it again. And they basically then for the rest of like the next like hour or two just go around Toronto and like wreak havoc with their magical powers. But not actual havoc, it's more of just like stuff that serves them. So like if they go to a restaurant and somebody's being loud, they like, you know, make sure that they get like milkshakes dumped on his head or something, you know, like that kind of thing.
And whenever they do that, like
Ileana
always gets. Well, Ileana gets to laugh at Karsh because Karsh always gets the bad end of it. Like they freeze paint and the paint falls on Karsh,
right?
Because you know that's how it goes.
And so while all this is happening, Karsh then is like, "We need to talk to them because the darkness can now sense them."
The more they use their magic,
right? So it's an issue because they're not prepared to deal with the darkness because they just found out they had powers about, I don't know, 3 hours ago.
Maybe.
So they're getting along swimmingly. Alex Cameron is still way more into it than Alex, but like as well as it could go. And Alex even introduces Cameron to her friend who she'd been living with, and like that means a lot for her. And then they end up like going back to Cameron's house, and Alex is just like, "Yo, this is the richest shit I've ever seen." And they go into a closet and end up in the original land that we see in the beginning, which is called Coventry, because Ileana and Karsh are like, "Well, we need to explain all this shit to them."
And they create like a dimension portal.
Right, through Cameron's closet. So then they go through, they explain it to them. Alex is not with the shits at all. She's like, "This is not for me."
And Alex knows it's Coventry because she's written about Coventry.
Right,
so
she's written about it.
Cam draws.
Right.
Cam's an art major.
Mm-hmm.
Alex writes. Cam sort of she's been drawing images of various peoples and like places in Coventry, but she doesn't really have any. She doesn't know what they are. She's drawn images of Artemis, for example.
Right.
Like sleeping. Oh, sorry, Alex. We gonna find out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you continue. But whereas Alex has been, when she was younger, she always used to write stories about Coventry.
Right.
And it's a thing of like she just thought like, you know, it was this thing
this
in her
thing
head,
she'd come up with,
but actually it's
a real place.
Yeah.
So Alex isn't with it, and so she leaves. Cameron is like, "I gotta convince her to stay part of this," and then they go out, I want to say, and then they're still, I guess, trying to like figure things out, but then the darkness like comes through again and
tries to snatch them, burns up the house,
and that's when they realize like, oh, this is like a real thing. And that's when they go back into another closet and they go back to Coventry. And that's when Cameron is like, "Yo, I thought this was just going to be cute, fun. We were just going to be these cute little witches, kikiing." And she's like, "But that's not it. There's actual people after us." And then Ileana and Karsh were like, "We know. We told you this."
Yeah, and you're the only ones who can stop it.
Right.
It's going to swallow up the whole land. That's what the prophecy says, that you guys will come together and you'll defeat the darkness.
Right.
And because their real names are, just because for kicks, are Apollo and Artemis.
Mm-hmm.
Apollo for the sun, Artemis, huntress,
right,
ruled by the moon. They're twins, yada yada yada, etc.
You see, yeah, you see the connections. And then meanwhile, while all this is happening, their mother in Coventry, she has an amulet that combines the moon and sun, so it starts like glowing or like it starts heating up. And she goes to her husband and she's like, "Thantos," which is his name, like she's like, "They're alive. The twins are still alive." because as soon as they like connected, it like let her amulet know like, you know, your girls are still here, and she had thought they were dead all these years because they didn't know what happened to them when the darkness attacked. They just thought they died like their father did.
Because Karsh and Ileana are specifically the father's servants,
right?
And so they took it upon themselves to like hide the kids because their father died protecting them,
right? And so then the uncle is like, no, you're like mistaken, you're not correct, blah blah blah. I mean, you can quickly see here the uncle is the bad one because the uncle's always the uncle is always the evil one. And so then he like gets
also
this
if you marry your brother's wife, dude, like you probably shady.
Yeah,
just
that's
as
just
a general
weird.
rule.
It's just weird. Don't do that. Just generally, just don't do that.
It's gross.
And so then he gets like this weird look in his eye because he's probably like, I thought I killed those damn children, but clearly he did not. So then we go back to like the main the Earth dimension or whatever it is, the main dimension. And we see that Cameron is, now that she's realized this is more serious, is like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, let's not, like, you don't need to come to my party tonight, girl, and all of that. And then now Alex is, like, on board, and she was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to then. And so she goes home to go see her friend, and they talk
home.
about,
just, like,
just
home.
to home. Yeah, just to her now home. And her and her friend kind of talk it out a little bit.
They fight.
Yeah, but like it just turns into an argument.
Yeah.
And because her friend feels a little bit jealous that this new girl has come in and they've only known each other for 6 hours, and like now they're both like obsessed with each other, which is also like, but that's her sister.
Exactly. Like that means like, wouldn't you, if you found out you had a long lost twin, you wouldn't want to get to know them? That wouldn't consume you.
Right. Exactly. But
sense.
She gets a little jealous. So at that point, Alex also realizes that this is like something that she needs to like take care of. And so she's like, I need to go back to Coventry and I need to find out like what's going on and like find out about her mom and like all of that. So then she goes
by herself. She thinks she can sort of handle it on her own.
Right. She thinks she doesn't need Cameron.
They got like 4 names between the two of them. It's a lot.
She thinks she doesn't need Cameron, so she's like, let me go. So she then goes to Coventry, finds her mother, her and her mom embrace, and her mom's like, oh my gosh, where's your sister? Where's Apollo? And then she's like, oh, she's still in the earthly realm. And her mom was like, okay, well, I don't know if that's a good idea. but
we'll try.
But sure. And so she introduces her to her uncle, aka now her husband, or now her dad, stepfather, whatever it is that would be called. And she introduces them to each other, and
he essentially realizes now that they're like, separate,
right?
Which makes it much easier for him to eliminate
vulnerable.
them.
Mm-hmm. So they're more vulnerable. Then we go back to Cameron's party, since now she's like both accepted and denounced her magic status within like 6 hours.
Her whole kingdom.
And she was, enjoying her birthday party somewhat, but at the same time also not feeling right because she knows that she left her sister alone. Her and her mom end up having this like very nice talk with each other where she tells her mom everything about her being magical and having a twin, all that, and her mom just like believes her, which I was like, wow. That's okay.
Kind of storytelling. They also accept that they're like twin, like the magic.
It literally takes 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's very quick. Like T and Tamara accept it very quick, which I appreciate. You don't have to
it's like everybody is just like, okay,
that's
like
fine.
We acknowledge that magic exists and that you aren't magic. So then her and her mom have this really nice conversation, and after that she like feels like she knows like that love is infinite and that she can always make more love and be a light in this world, yada yada yada. So then she goes back into the house because she has a bad feeling and she sees that the darkness is now like all up in the house, even though everybody's outside, but nobody else senses or feels it, I guess.
Well, it does chase some people, doesn't it? I don't know.
It chases the maid.
It does, yeah. The maid...
The maid gets a short.
The maid gets, like, really tortured by this darkness rolling up through the house.
So it chases...
The day. This
right.
takes place in the day. Let's just be very clear about that.
Right. Well, by this point, they're at night. But, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes
24
place
hours. Actually, 12 hours.
It's literally like a 12-hour day.
Time frame.
So then it chases her. So then Cameron's like freaking out and she's like trying to find a way into Coventry.
Yeah, and her parents, and it's chasing her parents. Her parents like...
Yeah, that's when her parents realize it was like actually real. And then also Ileana and Karsh come out then.
And her mom shows her Thanatos.
Yes, yeah.
A drawing she did when she was little of the darkness and the face coming
That's
out
when they
of it.
realize, oh, it's your evil uncle.
Yeah.
And
It's your evil uncle.
evil uncle. So yes, so then they do that, and from that point, then she finally gets back into Coventry, but we don't necessarily see it until we go back there, and then we see that their uncle Thanatos is like basically bitching and raving about like how he's going to take over and blah blah blah.
Well, no, because they don't know yet. He's like, oh, he can't. He says something like, oh, the darkness got Cameron or something like that. He said he's lying about it.
Right.
And then Cameron shows up and is like,
I'm already here.
exactly, and I know it's you.
Right.
And shows them the picture, and then he sort of takes off and becomes the darkness, and then decides to then he rants about destroying the kingdom.
Yeah.
And turns into the darkness.
Right. So then he turns into the darkness, and they're like, "Oh, what will we do?" So then they, so then they like take each other's hands, and they're like, "Love and light, love and light, love and light."
Yeah.
And like just keep thinking about it, and then the love and light like defeats all the darkness that's ever been.
They start like yelling out names, not yelling out names.
Yeah, they start loving out there like family and
who do you love?
names.
Who do you love? My mom, my dad,
my
dead mom, my
right.
dad. Like
yeah.
it's the whole thing, and with each word, with each name that they call,
we get more light.
Little flashes of light spheres go into the earth, and that's how the darkness is defeated.
And then it's defeated, and then they end up back at Cameron's house, and now Ileana Karsh, their mother, and the twins are all back there, like, enjoying themselves, eating hot dogs, and, like, it's basically just, like, over, and they're
It's a little bit reminiscent of the Avengers, the first one, at the very end after the credits, when they're all eating, like, shawarma.
Mm.
It's like a little bit like that. They're just kind of cooling after defeating Big Bad.
Yeah, and then they're just like, we have to stick together, and blah, blah, blah. And then Ileana and Karsh are like, are we going to move to this dimension? It's expensive here. But yes, that's basically how it ends up going.
Yeah, so they win. They win.
Yeah, they win. They defeat the darkness with love and light, which, as to be expected, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess, the opposite of darkness is love and light. Or,
yeah.
Or is at least light, which one would think would be quite obvious, but apparently
it's not.
Is not.
Yeah. Gotta throw in a little love in there. So I guess to get into the review portion, I mean, you had talked about how it deals with, like, motherhood, and I mean, I think you could even just argue, like, sisterhood to a degree.
Yeah, I think there's family stuff. I mean, not necessarily, because they really don't get into dad stuff, and I guess that's just because their biological dad is dead, but he does die, like, protecting them. And, it is a brother, it's a Scar, Hamlet situation.
Yeah.
What's his name? Claudius? Anyway.
Thanatos? What?
No, in Hamlet, I was thinking
of
his Hamlet. It's irrelevant. But yeah, it's just, that thing of, I guess, what is sort of positive and healthy familial relationship and love building.
Yeah.
And what is negative, detrimental, literally kingdom, earth, life ruining behavior in relationships and familial relationships. And it's not much more complicated than that. It's pretty straightforward of just, love people.
Yeah.
Literally just, love people, have room in your heart for more than... Have room in your heart to expand. Don't be jealous of your siblings for their gifts. Don't lie.
Yeah.
It's you know what I mean? It's very sort of run of the mill, like, just the basic things that you tell children from they're 4 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Share your toys. Like, it's that.
Yeah.
But it's just told through the story of light and dark. Literally the story of light and dark.
Yeah, and then I think also just, like, how you can, I know you had brought this up, like, how you can, like, choose your family to a degree.
Yeah.
Or not choose them, but, like...
Yeah, but that you can... Family doesn't have to be one type of thing.
Right.
Which is nice, They do accept that they're sisters really quickly.
Yeah.
But it's not automatically... Like, they recognize that they're sisters and they're... Yeah, at the end, that's one of the ones that they do... like when they're yelling the names that they love, they're like, my sister, and I think that's the last one, and that's the one that defeats the darkness. It's like, oh, that's sweet, you know. Like, I have a sister, and yeah, I guess like that's kind of cute.
Is that what you would shout out before you defeated the darkness?
I don't know. Some days, man, but other days, nah, absolutely not. But you know, it's not an easy, it's a complicated relationship. But they figure out that generally speaking, they're stronger together,
right?
And that's cute.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I think that's like overall the film is like it's cute, it's light, it's you know, it's Tia and Tamara.
It's Tia and Tamara back
witches.
at it. Yeah,
it's literally just like sister with magic. Like
sister's better by miles.
Yes,
by miles.
Yes.
And doesn't have garbage CGI running through it, ruining all of the potential good you could take from it.
This was an odd time in I think camera technologies.
Transitional period.
Yes, because it was like that weird point where we weren't quite, where you couldn't give people like what they were giving us in like the original like Halloween Town or something, because people would be like, no. And you couldn't go to like where we are now with CGI, so it was
not
just
on that budget.
Yeah, it was like so. It was just like this weird period where a lot of it you could see was clearly like photoshopped in, or like when the photos of houses and stuff. And I'm like, I see the line of delineation here.
Yeah, I was like, this is a stock image castle.
Yeah,
like you got this off Google and removed the watermark. That's what happened.
Basically, it was a little blurry too, but
also
you know,
the darkness kind of looked like a lava monster.
Yeah.
Because it had, like, these crackling red things. Like, I get that in theory it's supposed to be, like, a storm. But that's not... It's just...
I feel like the evil in this film was also... Yeah, like, I was just like... I get it. That, you know, the evil uncle, and he brings in the darkness. Like, I'm like, I understand it. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like we could have had a much better villain, personally.
A basic level of depth.
Yeah, like, I'm like, this one, I don't really... You know, what was he still mad about when, like, he already killed his brother and married the wife, which was the whole purpose of why he did all of this.
I mean, I guess in theory you could say that, okay, so the prophecy says that they'll come back to save the kingdom, right? So I guess it's a thing of, like, he's just trying to get rid of the final thing. But what I was very unclear on was, so, like, is the darkness... Like, how much does he control this darkness? To the sense of, is the darkness going to stay in the kingdom, like, around it just as long as he's there? Or, for the last 21 years, has he been like, let me pull that back inside? You know? Like, I don't have to have the darkness out, because you would think it would be the latter, since he's able to fool his wife.
Right.
And, like, potentially obviously able to fool his brother for an extended period of time, and like his own parents and all, you know, like he was able to grow
kingdom
to this age. You know what I mean?
Was he Rasputin?
Nah, dude, Rasputin is an outsider.
But he got in.
Yeah, but he's an outsider. He comes in as like as a shaman situation. Not a shaman, not at all. But you know, like he comes in.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Sort of, you know, magic man in touch with God, a religious figure. But I assume that this dude was born royal to an extent.
He must have been, because I'm like, I don't know if it came from the... They never say which line was the one that was actually, like, the royalty, whether it was their mother or their father.
Yeah, but usually... Oh, there's also always the thing of, like, it can be both. You know what I mean? Usually, historically, it tends to be both. Like, you only marry...
Other aristocrats.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, anyway it went, they were clearly blue bloods. But, you know, I think overall, like... Do you think that you would let your kids, you know, watch this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's Tia and Tamara. I'm never gonna not let my kids watch Tia and Tamara. And
That's so true.
And I mean, again, I'm not gonna force it on them. Like I said, by the time this came out, I was moving away from Disney, and I think I did watch it when it came out, and I feel like I watched it and was like, oh, this is garbage, and moved on with my life. And was like, yeah, you made the right decision. Don't come back to Disney. Just don't do it. You don't need to do that for a long time. So I feel like I would... Because I can imagine... You know, I haven't talked to my sister about it, but my sister was younger when it came out, so I can imagine that maybe she really liked it or remembers really enjoying it, because they made a second one.
They did.
So if you make a second one, you probably the first one probably did pretty well.
Right, yeah. I mean, you guys can follow this up quickly.
Yeah, if you're going to spend that Tia Tamera money again.
Our review of the second one, because I don't think I actually watched the second one when it came out, because it came out, by that point, I think we were like 14 or something.
Too old for that,
we were literally like in high school, I want to say. And, I also agree. I would definitely let my kids watch it because, again, yeah, you can't go wrong with Tia and Tamera, like, just, like, classiques on classiques.
Yeah.
And...
Black Girl Witches.
Yeah, it's just
literally Black Girl Magic.
Girl
like,
Halloween. Like, it's like Black Girl Halloween, Black
cute.
Girl Magic. Like, especially at this point, you really didn't see that. Like, it's like you had Rachel True in The Craft, but that wasn't specifically about...
That was also much darker.
Right,
and
it was a different type of thing. But it's like, but even, I'm saying in the total, like, the witchdom canon.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, they're really, even to now, there hasn't really been that many, like, black witches.
They did try to do that.
They did that with
situation.
American Horror Story to a degree.
Well, they're not black, they're of color, but...
Yeah, they're all Latina, I think. They're all Latinx.
Okay, I haven't watched it because...
I watched the pilot.
I do love the original Charmed.
Me too. That's why the only thing I watched was the pilot. But yes, no, it's like, but even now, it's like, you don't really see black witches, so I think that is, like, a really cool thing just to see.
Or in a positive light. You see them a lot in... You get a lot of, like...
Oh, yeah, hoodoo and the negative connotations.
Woman, what they would call it in Jamaica.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah, you
like
get the negative
They just have one in Big Little Lies. Zoe Kravitz's mom.
Oh, yeah. Well, she wasn't quite a witch, though.
Well, that was the idea.
She was...
she wasn't quite a witch, but yeah, that's what... But that concept, you get the magical
You get, like, the negative views of hoodoo and voodoo.
Yeah, but...
And it's like, that's not...
But you don't see, like... You don't see non-quote-unquote black magic.
Right.
With black witches.
Right. So it's like, clearly, I mean, maybe that's what we're calling out for, is there needs to be more, like, black witch films, because I think that'd be great.
Just black people and, like, blackness and magic.
Yeah. Like, we just don't get that.
And we are a magical people.
Mm-hmm.
By nature. We're also very spiritual by nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like culturally. That happens. So it should happen. There should be a lot more of that
maybe
content.
It's a religion thing. Because I wouldn't be surprised.
I feel like it depends. Because I think...
We did get Boo a Medea.
Don't talk to me about that film. This is not the time or the place, Chelsea, and you know that. Out here trying to start fights on a podcast.
I actually don't know if that had any magic in it. But I do feel like religion does play a part, though, for a lot of people, because a lot of people... Especially, I think a lot of black people that grew up in, like, very traditional, like, various denomination Christian houses, you're not allowed to, like, watch magic-related things, read magic-related... Like, you can't consume... You're not supposed to consume it because it's just taught that it's bad, and I don't know if maybe that's, like, a reason that could be part of it, but, I'm not saying that, like, white media would necessarily know it, or maybe they do, and they just know maybe it wouldn't click. For a lot of kids stuff.
I mean, I don't know if it's necessary that white media would realize that, but I think it's weird because there's a part of me that thinks that because of that, like, maybe the engagement of the black writers that do exist, or the people who can make sort of content geared towards people of color, that they don't have, that they either, like, they don't go that route. But my instinct would actually say that it's sort of the opposite, but maybe that's just me putting my own thoughts and feelings into things, because I know that I've always, my mom is religious and has never really been about magic and all of that stuff, but I always loved magic and sci-fi and all, like, the land of fantasy, and that's why writing, like, attracted me as a concept, and that's why I love movies and film and television. So I do feel like there's a line of sort of black writers or writers of color who would, and especially when you look at the literature traditions of many quote-unquote minority cultures, like, magical realism is rampant in that. It's all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
So I do feel like you actually do end up sort of, those people would be making that content. I feel like it's something that probably then boils down to the fact that, like, just enough for those people aren't allowed into the industry to make that content. Yeah,
and again, it's like, it's not to say that every black person is part of, like, a major Abrahamic religion that specifically doesn't allow for it, because that's not true, because obviously we're not a monolith. I I just do think it might play like a small part because there's a lot of people. I feel like for a lot of Black people, it gets turned into, instead of maybe the magic route, it's sci-fi. Like it's like you go that because that's like the more quote unquote acceptable of the two if you grow up in a religious household, and your parents are like none of that witchcraft and wizardry in my house. But and that's also not to say that white people don't experience the same thing, obviously, because there are like white evangelical Christians that believe in the same stuff. But I do think that maybe that's played like a small role. But and then I also think it's just that a lot of white media in the past has not thought that we belong in fantastical stories, which is
in any way but the villain,
right?
If we are in it, it's in a
villainous manner,
in a literal dark light,
right?
That doesn't make any sense. That's not smart. But y'all know what I mean.
Yeah, no, you're not showing up in like the best way that you could. But I think all of that to say, now that we're gonna parse into why hasn't the industry made more Black witch movies? But
this is not where we thought this one was gonna go.
No, we really didn't. But I do think it's actually an important thing to note because it's like now the more I'm thinking about it, I'm just like it does not really exist. Like there's not even like kids TV today from what I've seen, and like I don't have a child nor have I been around a child recently enough for me to like know what's actively on TV other than like Paw Patrol. I know they love that and like Baby Shark, but I don't think that we've seen anything with like a Black, like, not saying we need a version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but there's also not been like a answer to that's like Black or just even Asian.
I feel like
even Latinx.
I feel like I've seen though, and I can't call out anything by name in particular, but I know I've definitely, because I haven't done a deep dive into these like snippets that I've seen, but I feel like I've seen on like snippets of YouTube like web series type situations. That people are essentially just independently they're creating this type of content.
Right.
They're starting to make this type of content.
Right.
And I think it's just a matter of we have to sort of wait for those people to get their avenues into the industry. Wait for them to have their Issa moments. Yeah. So we can have more. So that we can have all
Black
of that
witches and
like,
warlocks
all over the screen.
Because I would love, I think it'd be so much fun to have even like a New Orleans set. I mean, we had the Princess and the Frog, but that wasn't I don't know. I feel like it'd be a lot of fun to have something that's like in New Orleans that's like surrounded about that's just like about like a voodoo tradition that's not always like associated with being super negative, or like even something out of Haiti. It's like I feel like, or it's like something in the islands like Santeria. I just feel like there's so much there that could be done. Yeah. For like kids or tweens or teens. And then even obviously for older people, but I do feel like children's and tween and teen programming matters so much for people. It's just so much, that representation at a young age really has a big effect on you. So I just feel like there's something that could be there. World
moving forward, how you will as an adult view the world is deeply influenced by
what you watch as a child.
Yeah, I'm relearning that in all of these Black sitcoms that are now on Netflix. Right. I've been rewatching Moesha and Sister, and it's like, oh, right, this is me and my friends. Right. Now. This is how we interact. This is this is how we, and it is because when I was a kid, I'd watch these, and this is how I learned. Mm-hmm. These are I mimicked those relationships in my real life, and having that representation, having these sort of role models who can make mistakes, but they're, right. They look like me and they sound like me, right.
They do similar things that you would do.
Exactly, and you're like, oh, I can be interested in this, and I can be interested in that, and I've never thought about my interest in that. So yeah. I've always loved the fantasy and the magic, and
same.
I would I would love that by the time my kid shows up, that I would love for this to be the worst of the options. Yeah, no.
I also forgot about Wizards of Waverly Place, which does have a Latina lead, and I think it's a whole Latino family. The whole family is Latinx. Sure. But I don't know if they had a Black.
I didn't watch it like
character.
That, so
I didn't watch it like that either. So
feel free to correct the new Sabrina has
it has what's his face, Ambrose
and the
and the Black Evil. She's the evil witch.
Well, in the first season she is she is the evil witch. Although the witches would think that she's not evil, but that's because they're not evil, but
right.
They're dark.
They're darker.
They're darker.
Right.
So
but yeah,
it's cool. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to show this to my kid. I'm going to show it to them when they're 8.
Yeah.
Because I think that at 8 they'll love it.
Yeah.
They'll be really into it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. My takeaway from this is you can rewatch it if like maybe this was your jam when you were younger and like go ahead, have a time because it's fine.
Like I loved it. I unabashedly I loved it when I was a child.
But you could also watch Sister and get everything but the magic.
Yep.
And done better.
Right.
You know? Better dialogue, just done better. Even when they meet their dad and sister, it's so much, when they learn about their mom, it's much better, you know?
Yeah, I remember that episode.
Those episodes are so
They're
good.
So
when
good.
they go to the mural, fantastic.
That was like one of those special episodes.
Yeah, yeah, they were, and doesn't Tia like go away with their dad?
Yeah, I think for like an episode or 2 or something.
Yeah, because he's like a photographer.
He's a photographer.
We are getting off track.
Yeah, no, we're way off track. But all of this to say, we do think there needs to be more magic black girls represented. That needs to be
because they exist in real life. They're literally everywhere,
and we think that needs to be represented more often.
Yeah.
And then you should also go and watch Sister.
Yeah. Also,
that's the other
go
takeaway.
Watch Sister. Yeah. And I think that sums it up.
Yeah. Twitches, can't get any better. Can't get any worse.
Can definitely get better. You can definitely get better. Yes, you can definitely get better.
All right, guys.
Yeah, have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.